who that is up in the upper right-hand corner?
It's the drum roll.
No, I do not. I put the wrestling guy for you, too. I thought you would appreciate that. Is that not who won?
It's Roman Reigns. Very
There
nice.
you go.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Good. Welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. It is April 4th, 2022. We are going to talk about a Pennsylvania school that is limiting snacks, because that, with everything going on in the world today, snacks is where it's at. That's what we're going to talk about. It actually does bring up, I think, some good questions.
It brings up lots of good questions.
Does. So we're going to dive into a Pennsylvania school that's limiting them. The Grammys let Will Smith have it. For those of you that watch the show consistently, we deep dived into this last week. We're not going to go quite as deep, but I think it's worth mentioning kind of what happened at the Grammys last night. Who should be surprised? Should nobody be surprised? And then last but not least, the most important topic really of the century.
It's Wrestlemania.
UNC versus Duke. The Tar Heels close out Duke. We're going to talk about that at the end. Everyone will just have to deal with me gloating. But I am excited. It has been one heck of a sports year for me, all things considered. So
whatever. Before
we dive into all of that, Mark, how are you feeling today?
Mark is good.
Okay.
I did want to mention this as before I forget. I should have jotted this down, but it's stuck in my brain for 30 seconds. Did you know Pennsylvania is the snack capital of the world?
I did. Because of what? Hershey's?
What? No, like
why?
Something about potato chips, pretzels.
Okay.
Like a third of all the potato chips and pretzels and stuff like that kind of snack food are made in Pennsylvania.
Crazy.
It's a ridiculous, maybe a third's not right. But if you Google it, just for whatever reason, you'd think like Idaho or whatever, but why it's here, I don't really know. Hershey's probably has something to do with it, but like Utz and Middlesworth and Hanover Pretzels is down in Hanover, PA.
Okay.
There's just a disproportionate amount for no real good reason.
Also, too, when you look on the back of a Cherry Coke, it's Hamburg, Pennsylvania as well.
All Cherry Coke is made in Hamburg?
I have never had a Cherry Coke. Now, granted, I'm
right.
from Pennsylvania.
Most of the time.
I have never looked at the back of a Cherry Coke and not seen Hamburg, Pennsylvania.
So, I don't know. That's interesting. As far as how I am, I don't know if I told you this last week. I'm having, because it's April. Remember I told you that the New Year's resolution should start April 1st?
Yes.
If you haven't gone to the steroid nasal spray yet,
get on it.
It's coming. Warm weather's coming. I know it seems like a rumor at this point, but it's getting there. So I've started April 1st, and my hypothesis is for people to get into shape, you can do 2 months.
Yes.
Until June 1st.
Okay.
You can't do 5 months. I mean, you can, but most people can't.
Sure.
So this April, I'm doing no ice cream April.
Wow.
So I have no ice cream, like things like cake, cookies, pastries out.
If it's a bad April, though, that's not crazy. Like if it stays in the 50s for most of April, that's not as hard as it seems. If we get a warm stretch in like the third week of April, you're going to struggle.
You think?
I do.
See, I think it'll be worse if I'm stuck inside. I think if I can get outside.
See, although I'm thinking if it's warm and everyone's running to Brewster's and Eaters and all over, you're going to be like, oh boy.
Well, see, and that's why I'm doing it now.
Okay.
Because in June, it's going to be warm and everybody's going to be going to those places. Like you go to the ball field on the ride home, you go there. So that's why, and I figure if you can get through April, then May will be. Now, my only exception that I've written in is Easter.
Okay.
Because I don't know if this is an everyone Easter. My mom is insistent that you have to have like a coconut cake on Easter. And I don't know what the Easter bunny and Jesus and coconuts have to do with each other. But and it is delicious, and it's the only time I ever eat it. So Easter, I'm giving myself the day off, but everything else, I'm through 3 days.
Yeah.
And I've had no ice cream, cake, cookies.
It's impressive. I commend you.
3 days.
Very, very impressive. 3 days is still impressive. Really,
but now I'm kind of like, now I made it through the weekend.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, well, now I'm gonna do it.
Okay.
I'm gonna forge through. So
Best
April is that's my April. So that's how I feel.
I'll do what I can to help.
No, you won't.
The first story, I will. The first story that we're going to talk about today, a Pennsylvania school begins enforcing student snack limits. This was just published on Penn Live if you want to see it. A school in Pennsylvania has begun enforcing limits on snacks. The Aliquippa junior senior high school students will now only be allowed to bring chip bags of a certain size, among other new snack rules. So if you can picture like the 10 Commandments, this is essentially Aliquippa's 10 Commandments of snacks, essentially, and the rules that they're allowed to follow. as of today, these regulations, they're going to try to curb excessive snacking. Students are now only allowed to bring in bags of chips that are up to 4 ounces. I'm assuming that is the basic chip snack bag.
I just threw away a bag of chips, and I don't know.
You think it was 4 ounces?
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
So here's my first thought.
Real quick. They are limited to 1 closed drink of up to 20 ounces. So you can no longer bring in like the liter or the one, and you can't bring multiple. You are limited to 1.
You can't roll a quarter keg into class anymore.
Correct. Real quick, the quote before we get some of your stuff. Due to the excessive amount of outside snacks being brought to the school, including but not limited to shopping bags full of chips, bottled and canned drinks, candy, etc., we will now be limiting what a student can bring, reads a post published to the Aliquippa School District Facebook page. I open up the floor to you.
My first, I'll throw it right back at you.
Okay.
When you were in school,
yes,
what was the rule on eating in class?
It was per classroom.
That's what we had.
Okay. So most of my teachers, you could have a drink if it had a cap, as long as you could, they didn't like open containers. If you could put the cap back on it, it was fine. They didn't like cans or like cups. And then most teachers, essentially most teachers were like, no food. Like, we're not dealing with that. We're not doing it. Most teachers were fine with gum. Most teachers were fine with like some type of like Jolly Rancher, hard candy, something that stayed in your mouth, right? Something that did have a wrapper and you were constantly. I did have teachers where it was like nothing, like no drinks, no food. I had teachers that were no gum. So it really varied, but it did determine your day. Because I can remember like if I had a second period teacher, like a second block teacher that would let you have everything, the whole first period, it's like, all right, I'm going to go to my locker. I'm going to grab my snacks. I'm going to get my drink or anything else. And then you had to essentially finish it before the third block because you weren't going to be allowed to take it with you for the. So it really did like structure your mind and how you snacked throughout.
When I was in high school back in the 80s, I never, ever, ever had a drink in class. Nobody did. Nobody did.
Not even water.
No.
Wow.
Now, because the whole like the bottled water craze, we did have bottled water. We drank out of drinking fountain.
Huh.
So
that wasn't a thing then.
No.
Okay.
We did not. Now there were, because we had clubs at school that would sell candy and stuff. Yes. The Spanish Club and the Monogram Club and all these things. So it was commonplace. You could go to the Spanish room. The teacher would sell you a Twix bar out of her closet. But there were certain places you couldn't eat it.
I can only imagine the underground market of like candy bars. And no, did you guys not have like an underground market in the school?
Well, we had, and the Spanish Club was most famous for it.
Okay.
A big plastic bag full of stuff. And kids would carry their books around and part of it, and you could buy stuff from kids.
Okay.
But
you couldn't eat it?
It depended.
Okay.
Certain teachers were fine. Mostly in the high school, if it was a candy bar, nobody really cared because it didn't really affect much.
Okay.
I'm picturing when they're talking about limiting the size of a bag of chips.
Yeah.
I'm picturing someone with a family size bag of Lay's that's just sitting there eating through. Yeah. Nothing ever like that.
Nothing close.
We never had anything like that.
So just like for the story itself, Aliquippa High School, for people who don't know.
You know who went to Aliquippa? Tony Dorsett.
That's right. Aliquippa is one of the, I think it's fair to say, one of the poorer school districts in the state of Pittsburgh.
It's right out by Pittsburgh, yes.
Yes. It's a small school, probably graduates less than 100 kids a year, I bet. It's not a very big school.
They're good at sports, though.
They're very good at sports. I'm going to guess, this is interesting. I don't know how to think about this from a student perspective. I was talking with Carrie earlier. I'm sure there is a perspective here of getting the most for your buck. And I'm sure there are kids that look at the 4-ounce bag of potato chips and it's $1.09 or it's $1.15. And they go over and they see the big bag of potato chips and it's $1.50. And I'm sure these kids,
and they're beating the system.
I'm sure these kids who don't have a ton of money, right? like, and listen,
most
kids, trying to stretch $1. I do wonder how that plays into this and if it was thought about at all.
Well, my thought was, I hadn't thought of your angle.
Okay.
My first angle was, does the school sell snacks? And the school was losing money because kids were sneaking it into the movie theater, if you will, as opposed to buying it there.
Interesting.
So was it now, because I would be willing to bet that the school sells chip bags that are 4 ounces. So that was
Interesting.
one of my thoughts. But I could also see, I mean, you've taught, I've taught, how disruptive it would be to have, Joe sitting in the back of the room crunching on a whole bag of chips through the whole class.
The rapper aspect of it is what's brutal. Not the eat. I don't think, as a teacher, I never had a problem with kids eating or drinking in my class. I had a problem if it was like the wrapping, crunching, like digging.
But
that was the part that, like, I was like, if you're gonna do it, like, have a plan. Like, let's not be like wrinkling through the bag.
Bring a
like,
banana.
Let's not be trying to disrupt class. So this is they applied the same guidelines to packed lunches as well. So there must be a health push involved here, right? Because the idea that now they're going to also apply this to bagged lunches, why would it matter other than the fact that you're just trying to keep kids from eating snacks all day?
Maybe. I can't think of a.
This would be my question. Are you even allowed to say what a kid can and can't put in their school lunch?
A kid brings, nope, that bag's too big. That bag's too big.
Are you allowed?
But no, I'm going to share it with my buddy. No, that seems a little bit overkill. Now, here, I'll just ask this. This has nothing to do with snacks.
Okay.
As a guy who got a teaching certificate and taught in public high school, and both of us have, hasn't everyone kind of had a desire to go teach in like an inner city poor district from a philanthropic way, to think that you could like help and make the world a better place?
I didn't, but I have a good story to tell you why. But I do think most teachers have what you just described. They're like, I'm going to make the world a better place, and where I can be the most helpful, that's where I want to go. And if that means being in the inner city, that's where I want to teach. I think majority of teachers have that thought at some point.
Right. Okay. So go ahead. Tell me your story.
My uncle taught in inner city Baltimore.
Which one?
Jim?
No. Which school?
I don't
you know?
I could ask him. I don't
Yes.
know. But he taught in inner city Baltimore, and he used to tell me stories about it. And for that reason, I kind of was like, that doesn't sound like what I really want to do. So I never had that itch, whereas maybe others do.
Okay.
So if you have an uncle who taught in the inner city before you, it can kind of make you think differently about it than maybe the naive 22-year-old also sitting next to you.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Now, I taught in Baltimore County.
Okay.
And so it wasn't city, but it was much more city than like here.
Right.
So, yes, it was certainly a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would have loved, if I could go back again, and I would have loved to have taught a year in the city, in Philly, in New York, somewhere.
Well, is there an aspect to this, because it's Aliquippa and like we're talking about Baltimore, Philly, or wherever it may be, is there an aspect to this too where sometimes like you don't get to choose what, like as a kid, like as a 15-year-old kid, you're not always going to get to choose what your food comes in and the size it comes in. And so there's an aspect to that as well. That, now listen, I'm sure there are kids running to the local mini mart and just obnoxiously grabbing the biggest soda or I'm not implying like everyone's innocent here, but there is an aspect to this that I do wonder how they're going to actually implement this consistently.
Well, you wonder too, like, was it kids just being ridiculous?
Yeah.
Because you see how trends go, you see clothing trends, and you see, and did they just have a run this year where kids are bringing in the biggest bag of Doritos that they can find just to be obnoxious?
Right.
And because, it's leave it to teenagers to be obnoxious.
Sure.
And because that the school district is thinking, once we put this out there, we're going to have to field a lot of questions.
Right.
One of the questions will be, as you brought up, aren't there bigger issues in the world than does the kid have an 8-ounce bag of Doritos, or does he have a 4-ounce bag?
Right.
So they had to be braced for this.
Yes.
And it has, it's one of those things, like, it's an issue, but it is that big of an issue that we want it to go public.
Right.
So it would be.
I think one of the things that helps them is that it is a smaller school. Because to try to implement this in a school that maybe is graduating like 300, 400,
yeah.
500 students. Like, I don't.
You have this in a 6A school, you can't control.
Yes, but the fact that I'm pretty sure Aliquippa graduates less than triple digits.
It's small.
So
Yes.
I'm sure that helps it as well. So, but no, I was pro snacks as a teacher. As long as it was reasonable, I didn't mind it. And even as a student, I can remember having classes where I specifically like knew I was going to bring food to.
Well, don't you think that it creates a level of like, respect might not be the right word, but like you get like, listen, just don't be an idiot about it and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be overbearing. You know, you respect what we're going to do and I'll give you some slack.
Right.
And I can imagine that most teachers that the kids kind of like and respect and that they don't have an issue with it.
I used to love when my students brought hard candy to the classroom because it's almost like a fidget in a way. Like, obviously it's not in their hand, like it's in their mouth, but like the room is so much quieter when students are handing out lollipops or like have Jolly Ranchers or stuff like that. So I was like a huge promoter of like the hard candy that they could suck on and still pay attention, but yet the class was so much more just quiet,
calm.
Yes.
No, I can imagine that. It's like an absorber.
Yeah.
A fidget absorber.
Yeah.
And I will just go on record and saying one of the worst candies in the world is Jolly Rancher.
Jolly Rancher.
I don't like them.
Interesting.
I don't get why. That would be an interesting topic someday. We should have like the 5 worst candies. Do you have a candy? Give me one that you just don't like.
I still don't, and this is a simple one. I don't understand candy corn. I don't understand who's eating it. I don't understand why they're eating it. It doesn't go well with like any drink or like any, like it's not, to me, it's just the most bland, simplest thing. Why would you eat candy corn?
I do get that.
Okay.
You never have like a bowl, but it's good.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Okay. It's not great.
No,
So that's mine. Mine would be the simplest one for me.
I can see that. I think people are tricking themselves into think they're eating a vegetable.
Possibly. Could happen.
No, that is not. All right, I can go with that one.
Yeah. There's a couple of them. Grammys, Will Smith. Did you watch the Grammys last night?
I didn't. What was I watching last night?
I don't know. What
WrestleMania.
Oh, it was Saturday, Sunday.
It's like Woodstock now. It's a
it
whole weekend event.
I knew it was a two-night event, but I didn't know it was Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, yeah. It's Saturday and Sunday, baby.
Well, I feel like most people didn't even realize the Grammys were last night. It was like the quietest Grammys ever.
Yeah.
Between the Final Four and what had happened the weekend before with the Emmys and just like, the Oscars.
You would have thought that there would have been some buzz about it from like, hey, award shows, you don't want to miss these.
Yeah, it was like, it almost didn't exist. In my world, it like almost
I'm
didn't
with
exist.
You. Well, here's my question. What network was it on? Was it not on CBS?
It should have been on CBS. I can't imagine they gave up the Grammys.
Have they had the Grammys or does ABC have the Grammys?
Let me look.
Because you get all the NCAA March Madness, like what you're watching, what I'm watching, were basketball games, and you see the promos for.
It's CBS still.
Is it still CBS?
Still
CBS.
Then
I'm surprised I didn't. But now.
Yeah, very, very interesting.
So anyway, Will had a rough night again.
Will had a rough night. Now, nothing was like too outrageous over the top. But I guess the point that I had made to you was Will Smith, there's a lot of actors that if something would have happened to them last weekend at the Oscars, the Grammys come up a week later and they're not really associated with anybody at the Grammys.
Right.
However, Will Smith is did you look it up?
4-time.
He is a 4-time Grammy Award winner. He is a rapper, producer. Like his kids have platinum records. Like
he fits at this party.
He is in the music industry. Most of the people at this award show have some sort of relationship, probably with Will Smith, whether it's in passing or creating or whatever it may be. And so I think it said volumes that presenters were willing to kind of go after him and make jokes about it. And some of the jokes they weren't demeaning jokes, but they were clearly on the side of Will Smith was wrong.
Are there still people out there that think it was staged?
I think, well, okay. I think that's becoming less and less. I said to you when we talked about it last week, I couldn't believe there were still people that thought it was staged. I think those people are starting to go away more and more.
Are those people realizing that they were idiots?
I don't know if they, because this is the sad part. I wouldn't call them idiots.
Why?
Because I think in today's world, if you want to question something for the first 48 hours, I get it.
I questioned it,
but I get it.
I questioned it for the first 4 minutes.
Okay.
Once he started screaming profanities from his seat,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so not 4 minutes, 4 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
When he started screaming profanities from his seat, I'm like, this isn't a joke.
I totally agree with you.
Because he looks like an idiot. And the thing, and I've had this conversation with multiple people who take this, the Academy Awards staged it. And I said to them when they're over, and people throw that out like they're really deep thinkers and they've thought this whole thing through and they know because the ratings are down and this is going to get people to watch. And I get that. And I said, I understand why the Academy Awards are thrilled with this because next year their ratings are going to be higher. Chris Rock is thrilled with this because now he's selling out comedy shows because people want to hear his reaction. Whether they even, though I think universally everyone says the joke was a bad joke and it was in poor taste. But tell me why, if this was scripted and planned, that Will Smith said, yeah, I'll go along with this. I'll trash myself. I'll look like an idiot. I'll be the punchline of every joke so you can get better ratings because my Q score is in the toilet right now. He is a guy who's generally universally liked. Obviously, him and his wife's relationship has been questioned. But overall, Will Smith was not a Hollywood guy that people didn't like.
I agree with
that. And Chris Rock was not a Hollywood person that people didn't like. So why would Will agree to this knowing the backlash? And when I ask this to people, nobody has, the only answer they have is all publicity is good publicity. And then I say, well, let's just go one step further. He was about to win an Academy Award.
Right.
Like, is this the time?
Right.
If he hadn't done anything in 10 years and he's trying to get his name in the paper, if he's Neil Young saying, I'm not going on Spotify, if Joe Rogan, I get it. But Will Smith, this is the greatest professional night of his life, and he's going to tramp by being the crazy soccer mom who's yelling profanities in front of a crowded room of like, this makes zero sense.
We're on the same boat because 4 seconds he started swearing. I was like, oh, this is real. I guess my point being is in today's age, if people need 36, 48 hours to really figure out how they feel about it, that's fine. Now, a week removed from it, yes. You just want it to be fake if you still think it's fake. You're just a conspiracy theorist about everything? You're just trying to figure out a way to make this more interesting or you're just an avid Will Smith fan. Who knows the reason you might be. But if you wanted the people who 36, 48 hours later were still piecing it kind of together, I have no issue with them at all. Not in today's world. How long does it take you to piece together? What's the upside for Will? 36 to 48 hours. After that, listen, not everybody's diving into this like you or I.
I don't. You didn't even have to dive. You just say, why would Will agree to that? Here's another thing I want to say. This is my last take. You've seen the thing, we didn't talk about this yet, where the Academy Awards said we asked him to leave and he didn't leave?
Yeah.
Okay, so now the Academy Awards needs me as their publicist. They come out and say this. I'm sure they say their mindset is, we tried to do the right thing. We asked him to leave, and he refused. In my opinion, they don't look like the good, wholesome people who tried to do the right thing. They look like the incompetent, helpless people who tried to throw a guy out of their party, and they couldn't because he said, I'm not leaving. And they said, okay. I mean, I can't believe they made this announcement. And I do, again, there were probably 3 eggheads who sat in a room who say, we should announce this because we tried to do the right thing and it's not our fault. Well, you look incompetent that you wanted to throw a guy out and you couldn't.
I think in the moment, whether it was the people, the other actors and actresses, the directors, just the Academy, in the moment, that world is such a bubble that I don't think they understood the consequences outside of the bubble. I think I really believe 30 minutes after that slap, if you could have walked around and asked people on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of an issue is this for the Academy, or how much of an issue is this for movie stars, or I don't think most of them would have said more than a 6 or a 7. And I think as time went on, 24 hours, 48 hours, all of a sudden, like, people in the Academy were like, oh, this is like a 10. Like, this is
I
a
agree with
real.
you.
And so I think, but again, like, they're just in such a. There were a couple of people. There was Flagrant 2 does a podcast, and then Bill Maher talked about it as well. I thought both of those shows did an incredible job of explaining what a bubble these people live in, whether it's the Academy, the people that are part of it, or directors or movie stars, and just the world that they live in. The idea that they would still stand up and applaud, and the idea that he would stay in the building, and the idea that he would still get the award and, like, not be arrested and all of these things, only in that bubble would any of that have made sense for that hour of time. And then as soon as everybody left the building, it was almost like the light bulbs of, like, the reality of what happened came to.
No, and I get that. And I'm sure with all of these, there's people scrambling backstage constantly, just trying to make the show go smoothly and all this stuff. And when this happened, this is so far out of the realm of anything they'd ever expected.
Right.
That, one of the things I read from people was like, the people who thought it was staged was like, where was security? They've been doing the Academy Awards for 100 years. They don't need security. Like, you don't have someone standing by the stage like a bouncer, just in case one of these actors who's like a 5'5" dude, in case Tom Cruise rushes the stage.
Right.
Like, this is not a violent event. You don't need a bouncer there.
Sure.
So, and these aren't the only award show. They have the Grammys, they have the AMC, and I know Kanye with his going on stage and taking the mic, WWE style.
First, can I defend? Because I'm a huge Kanye.
But that's the only other one in history.
I know, but it's not even comparable. It drives me nuts that the two things are being compared, because
they're the only two people that ran on stage uninvited.
One was assault,
correct,
and the other was harmless. They're two completely different scenarios.
They're not completely different.
They are.
They are completely different from the criminal aspect. They both made idiots out of themselves, and they didn't think they were making idiots out of themselves at the moment. And that's where they're the same. Will Smith hit the guy. Kanye just thought he was going to enlighten the world.
Okay. From a legal standpoint, yes. I guess the point that I'm making, though, is, like, it's like comparing, like, I was going to use an analogy, then I just kind of doubled back on it. It's like comparing somebody who...
Do we need a commercial break while you come up with a new analogy?
It's like someone who robs a bank versus the guy who steals the mug from the bar. And, like,
no,
they're not comparable.
No, it's the guy.
Those two people don't belong in the same conversation. Like, they don't.
No, it's the guy who broke in the bank with a gun, or the guy who broke in the Unimart with a gun.
Oh, like, not even close.
There's different levels.
No, but that's not fair.
No,
that's not fair, because that's not even close to what Kanye did in a legal aspect was not illegal at all.
But he
didn't do anything legally wrong.
I get that. There are two people in the history of television award shows, which there are a billion of them, who got up on stage because they were unhappy with something and thought that they were going to fix things they were going to take matters into their own hands and fix it. Will Smith did it because Chris Rock made a bad joke and he was going to slap the crap out of him. Kanye didn't like who the award was presented to, and he was going to step up and tell everyone how they were wrong and that this person should really get the award. And in Kanye's mind, I'm sure he thought that they were going to step back and say, oh yeah, Kanye's right. Taylor, take this award and give it to...
Everything you just told me, I know.
So they're all the same. They're the same, just minus a slap.
I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. Those are the idea that you just compared them. Like, when you compared that to the bank robbery, they're both committing a crime. Kanye never committed a crime at that award show. Like, to compare the two is blasphemy.
The only difference,
not the same thing.
Only difference is Will slapped the person and Kanye didn't. That's the only difference.
Yes, but that's the only difference that matters. It's it is.
Is it? You don't think so? I mean, they both made idiots out of themselves.
Okay.
They just did it differently.
Okay, but one.
But that's why they're
in jail,
comparable.
but one should have been in jail, and the other.
Well, I
shouldn't
don't think
have.
he should be in jail. Do you really think he should be in jail?
I think if the average person did that, I think if, let's say you and I had a fan pass to the Oscars, and you or I walked up on stage and slapped Chris Rock because we didn't like a joke, we would have been in jail.
You think if I made fun of North Carolina right now,
Uh-huh.
and you ran over and slapped me, you think you'd end up in jail?
At the Oscars. If you or I did what Will Smith did at the Oscars, we would be in jail.
Ah. So if a non-famous person.
Yes. If we had like a guest pass to the Oscars and we walked up on the stage and slapped Chris Rock for a joke we didn't like, we would have been in jail. We would have been taken out of the room and gone to jail. Not even a question.
Okay. I will not disagree with that. I will give you that. But I don't. Okay, so then let's take it back another step. So say we're here. Why does the setting matter? Because like if you came over and slapped me right now because I made a bad North Carolina joke,
well, I think
I don't think you'd end up in jail.
It's the difference between private and public, right? Like right now we're in a private setting. Like it's on film, but it's our private office and our private space. Let's put it this way, if we were at a bar and you were up on a microphone, like giving a speech or something, and I walked up and slapped
you, and I made fun of Blossberg and you ran up and slapped me,
there's a good chance the bar would throw me out. Like there's a great chance I'm not in that bar.
And I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
I think, but I don't know if you necessarily be arrested.
No, but that's at the bar's discretion. Because there are bars you would be arrested.
That is fair.
And there's bars you wouldn't be. Like at the Colonial in Covington, PA, you're not getting arrested, but your ass is getting hauled out.
Have you slapped anyone at the Colonial in Covington, PA?
Not that I
have you
recall.
been slapped?
Not that probably, but none that I recall. So the point that I'm making is the setting in the scenario does matter. I just don't. There are certain things about this conversation that people have attached to Will Smith and they've compared him to this person or that person or this event or that event. And I think because one person at an award show walked up on stage when they weren't supposed to, and he walked up on stage during an award show when he wasn't supposed to, well, that's the easiest comparison.
It is.
Okay. And the point that I'm making, though, is it's not a just comparison. It's not a fair comparison. It's to compare the two and act as if those two incidences emotionally, legally, that any of them are equal in any way makes no sense at all. It's a cheap comparison.
I don't think so. I think it's not. They're not a perfect. I get what you're saying, but I'm not going to say it's apples and oranges. I'll say it's a red delicious apple to a green apple.
And I'm saying it's an orange and an apple. Like it's the same fruit. I get they were at an award show. They were both at an award show. That's about as much as it has in common.
No, and they ran up on stage when they weren't supposed to be there and made an idiot out of themselves.
But
they have that in common.
But like other people do that, just not in an award show. It happens all the time. People streak at a football stadium. Like people go places they're not supposed to go all the time.
Okay, let's give that an example.
Okay.
So if you go run on the field at a football game, you're an idiot.
Okay.
If you go run on the field naked at a football game, you're a bigger idiot, but they're comparable.
Okay, but they're both technically illegal because you are going somewhere you're not supposed to go. Like both people
But you're not an idiot because it's illegal.
Both people probably end up in jail. Whether I streak naked or not, I'm probably going to jail. Like the police are walking me out of the stadium.
Correct.
Okay. So that's a fair comparison.
That.
So this is what I'm saying to you. If I hold
on, let me just jump in.
If I walk down the stadium and I try to sit in a better seat than what my ticket is, that's what Kanye West did. But
no, he did not. No, he did not.
Jumped onto the field and streaked across the field. That's the comparison.
No.
Yes. Yes.
That's not. No. Kanye did not just try to get a better seat.
Yes, because he did. He wanted to have his voice heard.
If you try to get a better seat, you can do that very quietly and very. You're trying to do it quietly because you don't want the usher to come up and tap you on the shoulder and say, "Do you have a ticket for this?"
That was a good one because we very clearly disagree on that one. So that was good.
It is, and I appreciate. I've had people tell me that Jeff is very willing to be wrong, like once a week, like this. This was your one. You got it out of the way on Monday.
That's fine. This will be one. Here's where I was right. So long, Coach K. Long live the Tar Heels. Greatest season in the history of North Carolina basketball.
Okay.
Greatest season.
First
in
of
the
all,
history of North Carolina basketball.
let me jump in.
Doesn't even matter what. Honest to God, if we didn't show up tonight, I would just pop the bottle and call it a season, and it would be the greatest season in the history of Carolina basketball.
So let's go back to where Jeff was right.
Okay.
On Friday, you said Duke's going to win.
I did.
So how does that make you right?
Because 90% of me wanted Carolina to win. The like bet my house, gun to my head side of me, I thought Duke was more talented, which they are. Anybody, like, if you watch that game and you don't think Duke's more talented, I can't help you.
So do you think
Duke was more talented?
It's a difference between the team you were rooting for won, and Jeff was right.
We're an 8 seed. Like, we're not supposed to win.
Your statement was, we're in trouble. So you're not right. They weren't in trouble. They won.
Caleb Love, we were a Caleb Love half away from this not even being a conversation. Like, we're like, yeah.
I don't see how that makes you right.
What, that we won?
Yes.
All is right with the world. Is that better?
Okay, I'm not necessarily agreeing with it, but that's a better statement to make.
No, in all seriousness, this was the question that someone asked me.
Before I forget this, we're going to get off the air. Who's the chick in the corner that you mentioned?
Olivia Rodrigo.
Oh, Grammy Award winner.
Yes.
Okay, now back to
she cleaned house last night.
Back to your
someone asked me, how many championships would Jeff have sacrificed for UNC to beat Duke on Saturday? This has been a question. If you're on social media or like this is the question they've been asking Carolina fans. And I thought a lot about this.
Is he talking Carolina championships or Loyal Sock championships?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let's just stick to Carolina.
Okay.
This is a North Carolina topic.
Then the answer is all of them.
It is. So I thought about this morning again. I would want, before Saturday's game, if you would have said to me, Jeff, you can beat Duke tonight, but you're going to lose to Kansas by 50 on Monday night, I would have taken it. I would have 100%. So,
I understand.
So I know,
and I think a lot of Carolina Nation is in your corner.
So the minimum is 1, right? Because I essentially said, I don't even care what happens tonight. So the minimum is 1. And then I started thinking about it. I like just what it meant to, I said to you, there was a group of people watching the game at our house. And the first 30 minutes of the game, it was your typical game. Jokes were being thrown around. People were hooting and hollering. It was a normal Carolina Duke basketball game. After the last to second media timeout, so less than 8 minutes to go, the entire room shifted. It was like the jokes ended. People no longer like were sitting where they were sitting before. People were kind of meandering to their own spaces. And it was like when something happened, it was like a very but it was no longer like the boisterous, like it really mattered what happened Saturday night. And we're a bunch of like random fans from Pennsylvania. So I can't like, when you say how much did it, well, yeah, well, I don't think so. So like, to me, this was the most important game of basketball, maybe ever. Can you and all joking aside, like, can you think of a more important game for the sport of basketball?
For the sport of
where
basketball.
where what was on the line for the two fan bases mattered more than what just happened.
There was a lot of theatrics to this one. I'm not going to debate that. You will never find a college basketball game with more just natural drama prelude. They had a week to think about it. I mean, people say it would have been better if it was the championship game, but they didn't have a week. If it was a championship game, they had 48 hours. They had a week to just sit there and think like Carolina Duke. So,
yes.
So the drama, it was better for the drama aspect this way.
So to answer the question, how many national titles individually? I don't think there's a national championship because Carolina, technically they have 7. Most people don't count the 1924. I think it was 1924.
Do they count the one where against Villanova when they lost and like either they called a travel on Villanova that didn't happen, or Sean May, something like that. Sean May should have lost.
That was in like the Sweet 16.
Yeah, but they went on to win the national title, which they wouldn't have won.
We were really good.
But when you lose in the Sweet 16, you can't win a national title. The referees gave you that title.
But we did win the national title
because the referees gave.
So the point that I was making was individually, I think I would sacrifice every national title individual. Like, so I wouldn't sacrifice as a total, but individually, if you were like 05 championship or that game against Duke, I think I'm picking the Final Four against Duke single time.
You don't think the Jordan jumper game was a bigger game for college basketball than this one?
In the moment,
you weren't even alive.
This would be my answer though. In the moment, no. Now, as time went on and Michael Jordan became Michael Jordan, the lore of it, yes, like it has become bigger than, but in the moment, the weight of it, like it was a really good game and it mattered, but not like this.
You know
like,
who
mattered.
You know who felt the weight of that game?
Who's that?
Freddie Brown.
Yeah, because he threw the ball to that's a rough one too. Well, that was the other neat thing about this game, because I've said to you, I prefer professional basketball instead of college basketball, because I feel like college basketball is kids messing up. The last 4 minutes of this game, dudes were hitting shots, guys were making plays. There was like a 6-possession back and forth where it was like Carolina 3, Duke 3, Carolina 3, Duke 3.
Would you have traded a Carolina win if God came down to you and said, Carolina wins, and Loyal Sock goes 8-14 next year?
I've never gone 8-14.
It's not a whole lot of fun. It would be less fun for you.
Okay, probably not, but Saturday, the fact that I even have to think about this just shows you how much Saturday really matters.
I'll tell you, and these are some of the things that Jeff and I talked about beforehand that we don't need to talk about on the air, but one of the things that I've heard from multiple people is Coach K now coming back, because this is the worst way in the world for him to go out. He lost at his home finale to Carolina.
North Carolina double tapped him.
Yes, they double tapped him as the old zombie land. And then, like, what are the odds that they match up? First of all, they're in different brackets. Carolina's an 8 seed. Just to get to the Final Four is great, but Duke was a 2 seed. Duke's not supposed to be there.
Right.
So anyway, and the discussion was, does Coach K come back? And I think in the ironies of all ironies, I think the fact that Carolina has got there after they had legendary coach with Dean Smith, then he went away, they had a couple guys, then they have legendary coach with Roy Williams. Roy Williams quietly walks away at the end of last year. They bring in a new coach in Hubert Davis, and he gets them to the national championship game in his first year. Mm-hmm. And Carolina and Duke are 8 miles apart. So for this aspect that this is hurting, if Krzyzewski even wanted to come back after they've done this whole parade of a year of the people at Duke have to be saying, well, look, they brought in a new coach and he's doing just fine. So we can bring in a new coach and the sun will come up again. Sure. So I think that the Carolina success, if there was any inkling of Krzyzewski coming back, which I can't believe there would be, because it would cheapen everything that just happened this year. The Hubert Davis success has shown the people at Duke, no, the sun will still come up. We will be okay with a new coach. It's happened everywhere else, and it's going to happen here too.
I think the difference is Carolina basketball nobody is bigger than Carolina basketball. Not Michael Jordan, not Dean Smith, go ahead, Bob McAdoo, pick whoever you
I know what you mean.
No one is bigger than Carolina basketball. And at Duke, that is not the case. Coach
it is Krzyzewski.
I
get that.
Bigger than Duke basketball. And so for that reason, I think he's back for one game. I think there will be just to try. Now listen, 51-49, 52-48. Like I think there's a slight chance that he is back for one game at Cameron Indoor. Not for the season, not for the
I think if he comes back, he has to come for the season.
I don't think so.
Because then
I think they and he can do whatever they want.
Well, they can.
Okay.
But if he comes back for one game, then it just makes it look like he couldn't handle losing.
Yes.
So he's going to come back and beat the Citadel, and now he's going to walk away. Like, if that is what he needs to ride off into the sunset, a win against UNC Wilmington, like that's I don't
listen. Because I always sound like a jerk when I talk.
I think this is the one. In for a dime, in for a dollar. He can't be in for a dime. You either got to be out or you got to be in.
I don't think he's an awful person. I don't think he's a great one either. I think he's very ordinary compared to what Duke fans and Duke lore want you to believe. I think he has some serious flaws that have been overlooked for years and years and years because of who he is and his stature.
Well, I mean, I think everyone has serious flaws. And when you get to any sort of rabid fan base with anyone that's had success, whether it is, Paterno had it, whether it was, it doesn't have to be in the sports world, whether it's an actor, an actress, a politician, or whatever. People with rabid fan bases are willing to, overlook everything. Yeah, I'm sure that there were times that he was not as nice of a guy as the world has made him out to be. But I think in the world of coaching, in the world of college coaching with the corruption and I think he is way better. Like if he's not an A, I don't know if there's a lot of A's.
I think his corruption was very much. We've talked about the Team USA thing. We've talked like his corruption just wasn't viewed the way other corruption was viewed. Like
him coaching Team USA is not corruption. It was just an advantage.
Him coaching Team USA was the biggest advantage
it was
a college coach has ever had in the history of college basketball.
I don't know about that.
It saved. He would not have been the Duke basketball coach for the last 10 years if it was not for Team USA.
I mean,
truly,
that you don't know that.
They were falling apart.
They were not falling apart.
Before 2010, it was brutal.
Stop it.
It was brutal.
You don't think John Wooden had advantage at UCLA?
Well, John Wooden's advantage at UCLA was that like nobody really knew what they were doing yet. That was John Wooden's advantage.
He was the only good program on the West Coast.
I understand that, but that's my point. Like,
he had an advantage.
It's like it's like in business. Like if you're like half the idea of being good business is can you be first? Like, can you just get there before everybody else?
But see, this is one of the other aspects. Like John Wooden is seen as almost godlike in college basketball.
I think to your generation more so. Our generation, like it's like he's there.
You don't even know who he is.
Our generation views him as the guy who got to do everything before everyone else caught up.
No, like nobody ever says a bad thing about John Wooden.
Mm-hmm.
But when you Google, like Bill Walton jokes about how much they were paid.
Sure.
There's a guy that was great friends with an organized crime.
Coach K was. You don't think Duke still didn't have boosters and were paying? You don't think people got cars and houses and jobs? Like,
but what
you
I'm
really
saying
think
is
Duke was like above all that?
What I'm saying is everybody deals with that.
Correct.
But
everybody else has repercussions of it. And Coach K
No. That's not true. There's lots of people that get through with no repercussions. I think Coach K, if you're grading coaches, yeah, the world has made him out to be an A+. Maybe he's not an A+, but he's an A. That's what I think.
Seems strong. This was just to end it, because I had said this to you before the show, and I think it's a very valid point. I have so much respect for Roy Williams for knowing when to walk away and how to walk away, and understanding that there were people before him and there are going to be people after him. I just have so much respect for how he handled it. And as a Carolina fan, thank God for Roy Williams. I am so excited for tonight. And I said to you, for the last year, everything has been about Coach K. Coach K this, Coach K that, retirement tour, hour-long specials, the speeches before the final home games, all of this stuff. And Roy Williams just shows up to the Carolina basketball games like a fan. And he just sits there and he smiles and he's excited. And I cannot wait for tonight, because you hinted at this. He coached at Kansas. He coached at North Carolina. And this is Roy Williams' night. So long I don't want to hear Coach K's name on the broadcast.
Oh, you will.
I don't want. He's done. It's over. He had 365 days. Tonight is the coronation of Roy Williams being one of the most undervalued and underrated coaches in the history of college basketball. Roy Williams, tonight is your night. Coached at both universities. He stepped away at the right time. He did it right. I hope he gets as much fanfare in that 2.5-hour broadcast than what Coach K got for the entire year.
Didn't they have players taking classes that didn't exist?
Who's that? No, they existed. Are you implying that African American studies don't exist?
Did they register for a class that they didn't go to, or there wasn't even a class?
A little bit of both. So the idea of it was
I thought they got credit for taking a class that the university didn't offer.
Understanding is they were essentially like paperless classes.
Okay.
Yes. So the class existed.
It existed on
There are
paper, but no one went
credits,
to it. Okay.
But the idea that like you showed up, like there was a classroom with a professor,
There
like
was none of that.
there was none of that.
That was under Roy Williams.
But welcome to every prep school and half the JUCOs in the country.
But it's not a JUCO. It's North Carolina.
And
it's an established university. See, that stuff didn't happen at Duke.
But see, you're not the idea that every basketball player that ever went through Duke was a Duke student is absurd.
No, and I get that.
Okay.
Listen, I get that.
Okay. Because listen, Duke has a challenge. Like their academic, let's pick the
prestige.
Word. Yes. Is certainly does not help them
I
necessarily in the world of competitive college basketball. So let's not I'm not saying these are dumb people, but let's not act as if like Corey Maggette was getting into Duke without a basketball.
Oh
like,
no, and
that's all I'm saying.
I understand that. No,
okay.
I'm with you on that.
All right, just making sure.
I just
Roy Williams night. That's all you need to know. This is Roy Williams night. Talk about a guy who knows when to walk away.
No, I get that. I think one of the other things too is that people talk about. One of the things that people want to have is it's fascinating. I think when you look at what fans want, and they want their schools where the people do it right and the kids go to class and all that stuff. And I think Duke does go to class.
Sure.
And I think the Duke kids generally, if they stay long enough, they do graduate. And I think that's important. Yet Duke's the most hated program in the country because they win. And it's like, well, this is what you want, or at least it's what you say you want. And,
do you think that's why Duke's hated? See, I don't think that's why Duke's hated.
I do.
You think so?
I think because people are sick of watching. It's why people hate New England. Why do they hate Tom Brady?
See, I mean,
because they're sick of watching him win.
Don't get me wrong. Winning brings hatred to the forefront. You know what I'm saying? But Duke, like, as a Carolina fan or an outsider, like Duke is hated because there is a standard that they live up to. And so anytime you cross that standard, you are now the hypocrite. So they hurt themselves by like, we are Duke and we do things the right way. And so now any inkling that you're not doing things the right way, you're just going to get piled on. And that's Duke's issue.
I would disagree with that.
For example, when the one and done whole thing started 15 years ago, the number one person against it was Coach K.
I agree.
Like, we don't want one and dones. Like, and now in the last 8 to 9 years, they have top 3 recruiting classes, and everyone in the top 10 are one and done.
Because they knew they needed it to compete.
Yes.
No, I get
so
that.
the point. So it is the hypocrisy.
But people hated them long before that.
Yeah, but I think it's that hypocrisy. I think it's the idea of like, we are Duke and we are going to do things the right way. And so now, like, when you're Grayson Allen and you're tripping people, when you're like whatever it is, if you're Duke, you can't step out of line because you've built yourself out to be this perfect thing.
I just think it's success. I think people hated. I think people hated Belichick and Brady, and there's no reason to hate Brady.
But
he deflates football. People hate Ohio State.
UConn has success. Carolina has success. Kentucky has success, but not like Duke. Duke is especially hated. You have to agree.
But you don't think
nobody is hated like Duke is hated. So it can't just be winning because other people win.
But Duke wins.
Yes, they have. It is the house on the hill aspect of.
There is that.
We do everything right, and nobody else does it the way we do it, and we still find a way to win. So now, the moment you step out of line,
I think from an academic, like we do have college kids who go to class and who earn degrees, and lots of you other schools that just don't.
Okay,
and I think
they do.
Yeah,
you don't think so?
I don't think there's.
I see. The weird part is you're proving my point.
I don't think there's a. I don't think there's an elite. Do you think Kentucky does? Do you think Kansas does?
It's the holier than thou mentality that like other schools can't possibly be doing all the things right like we are doing them. That's Duke's problem.
I disagree. But here, so to get back, we got tangented there a little bit. Sports fans want these superstars, whether coaches or players, to have to be driven to have all this overriding success that they can root for and root for and root for, and then be egoless. And it doesn't happen. You can't be this driven to be great and to be better than everyone else and to beat everyone else.
Do you think they're better than everyone else?
Hold on, and not have an ego. So do I think Krzyzewski has an ego to him? Of course I do. But the people that used to think that Joe Paterno, I love the people that say Joe Paterno doesn't care about his record. And I'd say, then why does he schedule 11 cupcakes a year? Or maybe not 11. He scheduled 9 cupcakes in 2 tough games because Joe likes to win. Joe loves his record. And that's so this people love to put that their superstars have no ego. And the superstars are overflowing with ego. That's why they're superstars. So I think, Krzyzewski, Roy Williams, I'm sure behind. I heard one story about Roy Williams, which I won't tell on the air and that he comes across as the nicest, most humble guy in the world. And I have one person who had a personal interaction with him, and he was not. So it comes with all of them, whether they're rock stars, whether they're athletes, whether they're whatever.
Real quick, but this is my point: is like we are talking about why Duke is hated and the issues of Coach K, and we ended it with Roy Williams isn't a very people thought Roy Williams was a nice guy. Like there is this aura around Duke that even people when they try to defend Duke, there's just this, you can't touch them. Like they just do everything. So that's why I said to you, do you think they're better than everybody else? Because there's a lot of fans who don't think they're better than everybody else, but they act like it. Like they act as if we are the only ones going to school.
Oh, no,
we're the only ones.
I think they do it better than everybody else.
So that's what I asked you, right? And so my point being is I don't think they do. I think the presence, I think the aura of Duke far exceeds what actually happens.
So you think, and I'm just asking you this, you think if you took the graduation rate of kids of players, not the kids on the end of the bench who are accounting majors, of players who stay 4 years, you think the graduation rate at Duke and Carolina and Michigan State and Kentucky and Kansas are all similar?
I think the gap is not anywhere close to what people think it is. I think,
and you may be right, but I don't.
I think there's people that think the Duke graduation rate is 99 percentile and everybody else isn't over 50. And what I'm saying is Izzo at Michigan State, there's no way the gap is that close. Like Roy Williams in North Carolina, there's no way the gap is that I'm sorry, that far away.
Can't we find these
probably?
Numbers? All right.
I mean, I'm sure the schools probably keep them close to the vest. I have no doubt.
Well, and I know there's ways around that too, because you have a walk-on. In his senior year, you're like, oh, we'll give him a scholarship so he boosts our graduation rate. I would love to know what Tom Izzo's honest to God graduation rate is. Love to know.
Yeah. Well, listen,
I'll bet it's not as good as Coach K's.
It's very I went to a D3 and transferred to a D2, which is a completely different world than what we're talking about. And my name was expunged from the roster of that D3 because it essentially made the graduation rate and different things not look as great. So if they're doing it, so the point I'm making is
but you left. You can't graduate from there.
I understand that. So the point that I'm making to is if D3 schools are doing this and you don't think obviously the Dukes and the Carolinas and Michigan, everybody is making sure that their numbers look better than what they probably are. Everybody.
Well, I knew when I lived in Baltimore, and I won't mention any schools, but it was a lower level Division I school, and they talked about, and it was common knowledge, this coach has never graduated any of the players that he recruited. Mm-hmm. They never did. And I know people say, well, that's on the player and that's on this, and it's, some coaches care and some coaches don't. Sure. And he was like, you're here to play basketball, and you're here, and you have to
profession.
And these guys, they get out of school, they've played there 4 years, they leave, they're done, and they're nowhere near a degree.
Sure.
And so there are schools with horrific graduation rates. Horrific.
All right. No more Duke talk. It's done. It's over. Good luck to the Tar Heels tonight. If you had to pick, who are you picking?
I think they win. I don't think Kansas can play this well again. And I think Carolina has Kansas's dude inside, McCormick, who now I do know a couple names from Kansas.
Yeah.
Is awesome. After him, they get ordinary very quickly. Okay. So I think too much depth inside for Carolina.
Sure.
And there's no way Kansas can shoot the ball nearly as well as they just did.
Yeah, I would agree. Let's do some afterthoughts here real quick. Let's talk about UConn women's and Gino.
I hate them.
Really?
I'm so glad they lost.
You're so funny. So you hate Gino,
hate
but
Geno
you
Smith.
love, but
I
you'll
hate
like defend Coach
I
K.
hate Geno Smith. Do you know why I hate Geno Smith?
Go
Haven't
ahead.
we talked about this? Not Geno Smith. Geno Aria.
What's the 10-second version?
Geno Smith is the old quarterback for the Jets. Because I think he just, as a guy, if you're a woman, if he's Tara Vandermeer or Pat Summitt or Dawn, what's her name, at Staley at South Carolina, then you have no options. You have to stay in the women's game. As a man, he could have gone to the men's game. And the fact that he decided to stay, like there is no, he is the greatest coach in women's college basketball history. No one will ever say that he is one of the great coaches of college basketball history.
You think he's less of a coach because he stayed in women's basketball?
I think he took less of a challenge. Yes.
Oh, I disagree with that sentiment, especially when you look at what he's done. I would argue to look at what he's done and the consistency of which he did it, and it's really hard to do that regardless of if it's women's or men's basketball.
I don't disagree with that. But
I mean, he could have taken a job at he could have taken a job at like Eastern Connecticut and and he just would have ran train. Like he just would have run shop.
In the men's side?
Yeah.
Yes, but my point is there's never a great coach like Mike Krzyzewski or Roy Williams or Tom Izzo or any of these guys never sat there and decided, do I want to coach men's college basketball or women's college basketball? And like Gino would have been able to jump to the men's side if he wanted to, because I think we are like the best of the best coaches are on the men's side.
I think Gino has had an crazy amount of talent, which is not going to help the argument I'm about to make.
Right.
So I'm very aware of that. However, I've said to you before, women's basketball and men's basketball are very different sports. I don't think they get credit. And I've said to you, the coach on the women's side matters way more than the coach on the men's side. There's a lot of high-level basketball where when the ball goes up in the air, dudes are just flying around. And it's like, who's more talented, who's more athletic, who's in the right spot. Women's basketball is much more a thinking humans game. You have to execute, you have to leverage, you have to be right spots, right time, multiple looks. The coaching aspect of women's basketball, you could argue, outweighs what will happen tonight in New Orleans.
But no one would ever say, when you're comparing, Krzyzewski and Gino, or even like Izzo or Jay Wright or any of those guys, no one would look at Gino R.A.M. and Jay Wright and say, oh, I'm going to talk like Gino's a better coach. I don't think anyone would ever say that, because Gino did not go up against the best of the best of the best.
I guess I just don't. Well, see, I mean, Pat Summitt's pretty good. Like some of these coaches are pretty great. Like this is what I'm saying to you. For you to assume that the best coaches are in men's college basketball is a slippery slope.
I would say that the best men's, and again, Pat Summitt, who, if you don't know, was a female, Pat, could not go to men's because she wouldn't have got hired.
I understand
she got stuck there. He is the only, when you talk about the great women's coaches.
But maybe she wasn't stuck, is the point I'm making to you.
No men's program would have hired her.
I know, but maybe she isn't stuck. Like when you're implying that, like, you're implying A, she would want to coach men, and B, you're implying that she would want to coach men because it would be a better product or it would be a harder challenge. And all I'm saying to you is, like, in the world of basketball coaching, I don't know if I agree with that sentiment. I don't think anybody at their level, like the top coaches in women's basketball, to imply they're stuck, I vehemently disagree with.
Name me another man who is at the top level.
But why does you're missing the point though? Why
because
does
they don't
it matter if it's a man?
Because they don't. Because the what's her name at Notre Dame is a woman. The coach at Stanford's a woman. Pat Summitt was a woman. Vivian Stringer at Rutgers was a woman. Dawn Staley's a woman.
Right.
Because all the elite coaches in women's college basketball are women.
Yes.
Because they can't go to the men's side. The only elite male coach in college basketball is Gino. He could have gone to the male side and never did.
But why does that make him less of a coach?
Because
he didn't coach guys.
Why didn't he go to the men's side?
Why should he have gone to the men's side?
Because it's more prestigious.
Oh, see, I just don't know if I agree with you.
Look at the ratings.
But what I want to watch versus what is a bigger accomplishment are two completely different things. Completely different.
But you still go where
I'm just saying they're completely different concepts.
But
just because I would rather watch men's basketball doesn't mean that the coaching is harder in men's basketball. And I've already explained to you, I think women's basketball coaches matter way more than men's basketball coaches.
I don't know. I think if he would have okay, I think he didn't go because he knows he would have got his ass kicked. That's what I think.
Okay.
You don't think so?
I don't know. I haven't read enough about him to know why he wouldn't go or didn't want to go. What I'm saying is what he has accomplished, regardless of if he's coaching against women or coaching women, what he's accomplished, I would not diminish simply because he never did it on the guy's side. I don't see the correlation with those two things.
So you take a guy who's a wrestling coach, and you take a guy who's a really, really good wrestling coach at Bloomsburg University or Clarion University, a Lock Haven University, a Division II school that is really, really good. And he is a legend. He is, and he gets the opportunity to go to a Division I program. Pitt calls him, and he gets to go to Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
And he decides, no, I'd rather stay at Bloomsburg than go up to Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Well, those are two different.
It's more prestigious. It's a bigger school.
It's not a great analogy though, because you're talking about the difference. You're talking about the difference in level, and what you're implying is that it's more impressive when a coach wins a Division I men's title than it is when a coach wins a Division I women's title. And what I'm saying to you is I don't really see the difference. And in a lot of cases, I would argue the women's title in some years would be harder to win.
Well, you know who sees the difference?
Who's that?
The viewing audience.
Yes, but
because
again,
a billion people watch the men.
But whether I want to watch something versus the accomplishment and how hard it was to accomplish it doesn't who won not UConn, who just beat UConn? South Carolina. Like the South Carolina women's team just won a Division I national title.
Mm-hmm.
And someone tonight is going to win the men's Division I national title.
Mm-hmm.
The argument in a way that you're making is that tonight's winner had a more difficult path and challenge than last night's winner. And what I'm saying to you is I disagree.
They have 100 times more scrutiny, 100 times more public everything. And that makes it harder.
Ooh,
absolutely. Without a doubt. The high school guys, the teenage guys, the sophomore from Kansas has so much more pressure because he's playing in front of 70,000 people and he's being watched by millions of people around the world. And he's got Twitter followers from all over and all these. There's so much more scrutiny and pressure. Okay. So much more.
Wow. I'm really surprised by that. I did not expect you to have.
But that's right. On it. Because there's so many more eyeballs on it.
I know that here's what I'm saying. If your checkmate to all of this is viewership and eyeballs, I don't think it's a great argument. If that is your checkmate stamp that a men's college basketball championship matters, or I should say matters, weighs more. It's a harder challenge than the women's. I just don't think it's a good argument. I think it's a very you're correlating viewership to the challenge at hand. And I'm telling you, what South Carolina pulled off is every bit as impressive as what Kansas or North Carolina is about to pull off. It is. One just happens to be in one bracket and one just happens to be in the other bracket, and they happen to be labeled women's and men.
So, all right, well, I can't believe that.
Now, here's my thing. If your argument to Gino is that he was afraid, or that he didn't think he could coach men, he couldn't stand up in front or whatever, there's a path there to I could understand why you would like. I wanted to see him accept that challenge, and he didn't accept it.
What else would it be?
Then I totally get that. What's that?
What else would it be?
What do you mean? Like why he wouldn't?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I mean, part of it is just comfort. Part of it's just like it's not like he's not making money at UConn. Like it's not like he's not getting paid. Like it's not. So I don't know. And again, it's that idea too of like I still find his consistency in what he's done. Again, he had a ton of talent when other people didn't necessarily have the talent to compete. But I look at like what he's been able to do as far as like recruiting and like I could make the argument his life recruiting is way harder as a men and women's basketball than it would be for a woman in
I disagree.
Like
because
really
they'd made the bed so much. If you wanted to go to UConn, if UConn gave you an offer,
but he had to do that.
But he created it. I get
correct.
That.
Like he had to.
Isn't
figure
there
that
an interview
out.
with him that like he started coaching women's basketball because he realized that there were no coaches there that knew what they were doing?
So I've told you this before. I have a friend who is now a Division I basketball coach in the state of Pennsylvania, and he was a Division III men's coach. And then he became a Division III women's coach, and he turned that job into the job he has now, which is D1. And he told me over and over again, the reason he switched from D3 men's to D3 women's is because every time he walked out to shake hands, he felt like he was the smarter coach.
There's my argument right there. So you can't tell me that the coaching is as good in women's basketball as it is.
I don't. At the top, I do. I think, like, for example, we just watched March Madness. Like, once you get to like the Sweet 16, Elite 8 of March Madness, you don't think those coaches and those programs are like you don't think at that point you're not coaching against a peer. You don't think you're not coaching against somebody that is on the same level as you.
Wait, hold on. I was thinking.
Okay. You just said that should explain it all because he felt like he was the smartest coach every time he went out to shake hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's like, I'm sure there are top tier programs across the country, like whether it's the ACC or the Big Ten or whatever else, there are coaches that feel that way. Like when they walk out to shake hands with somebody and they're like 10th in the conference and we're first in the conference, they're like, our advantage tonight is that we're smarter than them, right? But the point I'm making is once you get to like the Sweet 16, like if you're not walking out and shaking hands with somebody and you don't think they're your peer, like you don't think they're on a competitive level with you, you're insane. Like at that level, it's evil. Like it's even now.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
So do you think if Jay Wright walked across in the women's Final Four, he thinks all four of those coaches know as much basketball as he does?
I think he believes that. I think every coach believes they're the smarter one, right?
No, we don't.
Okay.
But anyway,
but I think like when Jay Wright walks out, like, do I think that Jay Wright probably thinks that if you gave Don Staley the talent that in the time that Jay Wright gets, I think he probably thinks Don Staley could figure it out. You don't think so?
Maybe for a handful. But do you think in the Sweet 16, you think the Sweet 16's women coaches are as smart as the Sweet 16 men coaches?
Yes. At that level, yes, I do. Like the idea that if Pat Summitt let's say Pat Summitt got Duke's basketball program, like Duke's men's basketball program, the idea that Pat Summitt wouldn't be able to game plan, execute, organize, lead, motivate just as well as any of the other Sweet 16 coaches is ludicrous.
And I can understand that from Pat Summitt, who's maybe the greatest of all time.
Okay. You don't think that for like Don Staley or Stanford's coach or Gino or any of the women's coaches?
I think we'll never know. Well, no, and I say it. I'm sure that there's a level that they could. But again, I keep saying they don't get the opportunity because they're stuck. And if Dawn Staley, if they came to Dawn Staley right now and said, you could have the men's job, and oh, by the way, you're going to get a 3 times salary increase, she would take it.
Yeah, but don't include the salary,
but
it's
part of it. But it's part of it.
I know, but
you know who wouldn't take it?
Who?
Gino Auriemma.
I don't know.
And if Gino Auriemma was winning men's titles, he would make infinitely more. If he made the Final Four 13 years in a row on the men's side, he would make infinitely more money.
Okay.
So why didn't he do it? Because we just said Dawn Staley. You just said anyone would have done it. But Gino didn't.
Yes.
But Gino didn't.
But you don't think Gino had the money? Like, you don't think Gino had what he needed? Gino, I'm pretty sure, besides Jim Calhoun, I'm pretty sure Gino is the highest paid government employee in the state of Connecticut.
And I agree with that.
Okay.
But he was but not as high as the men's coach. But what I'm saying is There's no basketball fans, and I think Don Staley's a great coach, and I think Muffet McGraw is a great coach, and I'm not demeaning that. But there's no one in the world that says Gino Auriemma lost to Don Staley. Oh, that's the same as losing to Mike Krzyzewski. It's the same as losing to Jay Wright. It's the same as losing to Tom Izzo.
So
it's the same as
let's flip
to
it.
Bill Self. Nobody says
so
that.
let's flip it then. You put Coach K in the Sweet 16 on the women's side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give him a competitive team in the Sweet 16. Are you implying that Coach K has an advantage over everybody else in that tournament? Because to me, that's insane. There's no way that he has a competitive advantage over the other 15 coaches in the Sweet 16 of women's basketball.
Well, I mean, he would have to, if he had been in women's basketball for 10 years, I think he would be the best women's basketball coach in the world, just like he was the best.
Just because he coached men's basketball.
No,
and
because
won a national title in men's
But because he was the best men's coach, I think he would be the best one. Because this is what I'm saying.
Then
we
pick
know
a different. You took that question and you ran with it from a Coach K perspective instead of running with it from a women's versus men's basketball perspective. So pick no name. Let's say the 12th best men's basketball coach in the country. Okay, his name is No Name Johnson. No Name Johnson now inherits a women's basketball team in the Sweet 16. The idea that he has a competitive advantage over the other 15 women's basketball coaches is insane. He doesn't.
Okay, so here's what I'll say, and you may be right, but here's what I'll say. You know, one women's Division I coach who is a man, and he told you that he went to the women's side because the coaching wasn't as good.
Correct. Now again, but also
that the defense rests.
But have context. Like in his conference, which there's hundreds of Division III conferences.
Well, okay.
Yes. And then it was Division III to Division III.
Okay.
Okay. So all I'm saying is he's now a Division I coach in women's basketball. I'm sure he does not feel as strongly when he goes out to shake their hands. Don't be wrong. I'm sure he still believes he's the best coach in the conference. Like every coach has to have some sort of like that belief. Like you have to believe you belong. But like there's no way he still feels as strongly about that now as he did jumping from Division III men's to Division III women's. There's no way.
You'd have to ask.
I would have to ask him.
But the one time you did ask him, he said, I went to the women's side because the coaching is.
He said, I jumped to, and by the way, he took over like one of the best women's programs in Division III basketball.
Yeah.
And he said, he's like, every time I walk out, I think we're the more prepared team. Like I'm the smarter coach every time I walk out.
That's the defense rest. That's all I'm saying.
That's not true. Who else do we have? Do we have anything else before we go? We have to go here shortly. I feel like Mark must be a huge fan of Taylor Swift for him to think it's like the same scenario. I think he's referring to the Kanye West.
I am a fan of Taylor Swift.
You're a huge fan of Taylor Swift.
Apparently,
here's the point.
But I think Taylor Swift is immensely talented.
I know you do. Here's the point he's making is you must be a huge Taylor Swift fan to think that taking the microphone from Taylor Swift is equivalent to slapping a grown man.
I didn't say it was equivalent. You said it's a horrible comparison.
It is a horrible comparison.
It's not a horrible comparison. They're the only two who ever did it. They're the obvious comparison.
It was pretty
There's
bad.
a reason that everyone's making the comparison.
Heather defended you. Heather says you wouldn't have made it to the stage to slap Chris Rock. You'd have been stopped before you even got
I disagree.
close.
There's nobody there to stop you.
It is interesting. You don't really see anybody.
There's nobody there. And like when this isn't at like the NFL Combine. Like these people sitting in the crowd are 5'4", 100 nothing.
That's true.
Like Will Smith's the biggest guy in the room. Next to Samuel L. Jackson's not a small guy either. But like Hollywood people are not big.
Yeah. No,
usually, historically.
Yeah, historically they're not big. Anything else before we go? Anything on your mind? Anything that's bothering you?
No, but I think you're going to win. I think North Carolina wins.
Really? You think so?
Yep, I do.
Interesting.
And I was really glad when Gino
lost. I'm happy for you. I'm Jeff Everett. I don't usually start with the names, but I just did. Thank you for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all your local news. Graphics were good today.
They were good.
We're back on.
Except I didn't know who the girl was.
You didn't know? Olivia Rodrigo. That might be a conversation.
Oh, tomorrow we should do a whole recap of WrestleMania.
We can do a recap for WrestleMania.
Actually, I to tease this, and not that anyone's listening anymore, because we just if college basketball doesn't turn them off, talking about women's college basketball certainly.
Yeah, but men's, women's, that's. People like that stuff.
Do they?
Yeah.
We have a really good guest we think coming on this week that will be interesting. Okay. So we'll just tease it, and it's coming up sometime midweek, late week, but we think we have a good guest. It'll be cool.
Okay, sweet. That'll be it for us. Go to NorthcentralPa.com for all your local news. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. We'll see you tomorrow.
See ya.